Hello everybody. So what we're going to do today is put a set of front brakes on my oldest daughter's car. She's home for the holiday weekend, so her local tire shop, she lives out of the area, told her that the front brakes are getting pretty warm, so had her pick up the parts, try to save her a couple $100. You know, you thought once you got your kids raised you weren't worried about them, but that is certainly not the case. She's in her late 20s and single, and so we're still worried about her and doing what we can to help her. So just front disc brakes on these little GM cars, pretty easy to do. So I'll just go through what we're doing. So these front disc brakes are really pretty simple. I'll kind of go through how we're going to do it. I don't know how well you guys see in the camera, but all you got to do is remove that bolt. There's another one just like it in the bottom here. This guy right here. Then you just compress the piston on this brake caliper, and that should come right off. So it's interesting on this socket, it's a 14 millimeter, which is almost exactly the same as a 9/16. Pretty unusual. Most of these, you know, late model cars are pretty much all metric. So what I'm doing is using the end wrench just to break them loose. And I can grab this air ratchet and zip them out of there pretty fast. Well, there's a brake caliper assembly. Not too much to it. Our brakes are getting a little bit thin. They're not too bad. I suppose brakes isn't one of those things you want to wait till the last minute. If I use the old brake pad, just stick it in there. Sometimes you get with these big pliers, you just have to compress. Just like that. I don't know how, probably can't see it very good. So that piston right there, you can see that's pretty flush with the housing of the brake caliper assembly. I just shoved that in. It was sticking out about that far, so I was able to push it in with those big pliers. And I'll just slide the new brake pads inside there, put it back on. We're going to replace her We're gonna replace the rotors while we're doing it. That's gonna make it a little bit more complicated. I gotta take this bracket assembly right here off. This right here is gonna come off so we can get this brake rotor off. These small cars, the brake rotors warp pretty easy, and it just causes pulsing in the pedal. So as you just put on the pedal really soft, if you're just slowing down gently, you'll feel a little pulse in the pedal. That's the brake rotors that are warped. In the old days, we used to turn those on a lathe. Nowadays, we just replace them. They make them so thin. Of course, to get the caliper or the brake bracket off, you have to get a different socket. So that's all there is to it. There's the brake rotor off. Just 2 bolts to get that brake caliper assembly off. It's kind of nice because these are exactly the same. All 4 pads, for the way they fit in the brackets. So there's little spring hangers in there. They're real simple how they go together. I put just a little bit of grease on where the pad sits in that spring. So it just helps slide that back and forth. I'll grab the camera so you guys see a little better. So right there you can see the new brake pads. There's these little spring hangers in there hard to see on the camera, but those brake pads just snap into place, these springs. Put a little bit of grease on there, and this caliper assembly just sits right over the top of it. And here's the bolt. I've got to get both hands on it, but that bolt just screws into there. And this guy floats just a little. See how that moves back and forth? That's as this brake assembly is squeezing back and forth. That has just a little bit of move to it. It's real simple. All right, so we're ready to go back together. I'm gonna put the tire on. One thing that, if you guys decide to go after these brake shoes or the brake pad yourself, they really are, they're pretty simple. But one thing you gotta know, and I've had this happen pretty much every time, or had a few near misses, is when you do that, you brake or you compress those cylinders. Sometimes they call them a slave cylinder, but it's that brake caliper. When you want to push on the brakes, you will have no brakes. So I'm kind of on a hill in my shop here. So when I get back in the car, what you have to do is pump those brakes 3 or 4 times. And what you'll find is the minute you put on those brakes, they'll go right to the floor. You just have to pump them 2 or 3 times. Those calipers self-adjust, and then everything will be fine. But I've went to back out of a shop or something and panicked, forgot that actually happens, and then you have no brakes. So anyway, best thing to do is just pump them a few times before you even try to move the vehicle. All right, that's really all there is to it. It's pretty simple. I'm gonna get a torque wrench and I'll torque them off, look it up on the internet and see what the torque spec is. But I've got a real nice Snap-on 1/2-inch drive torque wrench, probably about 75 pounds or so. But I'll look it up, torque it, put the hubcaps back on. That's all there is to it. So, you know, we talked about some of these things that we do around here. It's just, like I say, I kind of call it life skills. It's kind of nice to be able to know your way around the car enough to be able to put a set of brakes on, and especially these young people going to college, poor, don't have a whole lot money to spend on this kind of stuff. And so for me, I feel pretty grateful that I can help my kids out. So thanks for watching. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.